talk about hacking the hackers and a little bit about what the Toronto Police Service is doing with respect to tackling this new type of crime. And in the interest of just, I have weird interests. I saw this on the weekend and I thought about it last night because I was in Montreal and this was just parked randomly on the street and thought it was really cool and took a photo of it. I don't know if you can see it. It says Zombie Response Team. So yesterday, this is what I was looking at on my phone. The guy came back who was the owner of this Jeep, and now that I know that Jeeps are compromised, I'm even more concerned if there's a zombie apocalypse. But because I'm with a group of cops, we're telling him, if there really was a zombie apocalypse, this would not survive. Can anyone tell me why? It's got a soft top. So we were like, the zombies are going to rip through that and you're all going to be dead. And anyway, the guy was like, whatever. It's a tourist attraction thing. So I thought that at least you guys would appreciate that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our cases today in terms of tactics, and I'm not going to get into specifics at all. And I wanted to highlight two pieces before I begin. One is that you'll notice that you don't hear a lot about the Toronto Police Service Cybercrime Unit in the news. And this is one of the reasons why. You make yourself a target when you put out there different cases that you're involved in and different people that have been arrested. So what we've done is typically over the past year, because we started in June of 2014 when we've made a big arrest, we haven't done a press release. It's a bit counterintuitive to what police typically do in these situations, and it's because one, we don't want to make ourselves a target, and two, because a lot of companies we're finding are not coming forward. Corporations don't want to be associated with breaches in the same for all the same reasons that Dr. Parsons just talked about this morning or this afternoon. And we want to respect that and to give them the opportunity to come forward. In some cases, we've actually gone to corporations and said, we know that you've been compromised, and do you want to work with us because we know who did it? In which case people go, sure, that sounds good, yeah. But generally speaking, we're finding that a lot of corporations are not coming forward. So has anyone heard of the Lizard Squad at all? Yeah, a few people have. Okay, so for those of you who haven't, they are sort of most well known. They're a collective on the internet of various hackers, and they came together on Christmas Day of 2014, and they took down Sony PlayStation, Microsoft Xbox. And that was significant because a whole bunch of kids got up with Christmas gifts on that date and then couldn't get onto the system. So it caused massive issues for Sony and for Microsoft, and it became a big deal in the news, and people had their licenses extended, and the company had to do a lot to try to make up to people the fact that it had gone down on that day. And then a whole bunch of things came out in the news when this group called the Lizard Squad took credit for it, and there was a lot of press on it, and who are these people, and researchers and just interested journalists got online and started seeking out who these people may and may not be. It was very interesting, and I'll get into this guy. Before I get into one of the people that was involved, I just thought it was really interesting because you talk about collectives on the internet. So you have one collective entity, group of people who are calling themselves the Lizard Squad, and then you have another collective group of entity calling themselves Anonymous, and this turned into a bit of a fight on the internet. Anonymous released 2 official videos. I thought about showing them to you today, but in the interest of time, I can't. But if you Google them, I just thought it's funny because Anonymous wants to assert themselves as being completely different than the Lizard Squad in terms of their ethics. Taking down Sony PlayStation was not cool, and then there were fake videos that were put out by people that were not anonymous. So Anonymous put out videos saying, actually, we're the real Anonymous, we're legitimate, they're not. Don't listen to that video, listen to this video. So it's just sort of interesting to see how various collectives, when you're talking about groups of people who are somewhat organized, somewhat not, put out this information. So I thought this was really fascinating. This here is Julius Ryan Cuban Mackey. What I thought was really fascinating about this is that he's one of the people who's taking credit for being part of the Lizard Squad and for being involved in the Sony PlayStation hack. And he was just sentenced in July in Finland to no jail time. He was convicted of over 50,000 computer crimes and in addition to that, DDoSing several people in their life. And so the other thing to think about with respect to hackers is they don't just do stuff online, they do stuff in real life. So in this case, they took credit for going after certain people in real life and doing things like, swatting them and having tricks played on them where, they were getting thousands of phone calls to their homes because the phone number had been put up as offering a Tesla scooter if you were the first one to call, those kinds of things. So really, really engaging in harassment type behavior. In this case, he received no jail time. He's got 2 years, sort of the equivalent of probation. It was a suspended sentence, in fact. And he's been ordered to fight cybercrime, so he's got to work with the police to assist them in the future, which is sort of interesting. So the reason that I actually bring that up before I move on is that there is a Toronto connection to this, and you won't see a press release on this, but we did make an arrest this year. One of the challenges that we face as a local jurisdiction is that you're dealing with a collective of people who come together online. They are not faced with jurisdictional issues like we are. They can talk online freely, they can collaborate, they can do it instantaneously. And in our case, as a police service trying to deal with this, when you discover that you've got someone here in your midst that is involved in this as well, suddenly we had police jurisdictions internationally interested in what we were doing. We had conferences where we had to fly people into Toronto to try to deal with how to proceed next in the investigation and making sure that we aren't stepping on the toes of someone else with respect to their investigation. And we dealt with it differently than Finland did. We didn't do a press release, but just as you see this and you think, oh, that's really interesting. And I remember that Sony PlayStation hack, and that was kind of a big deal. There's someone who was involved, or allegedly involved, I should say, because it hasn't gone through court yet, but here in Toronto. So it's not just international, it's happening here as well. So what do you do with that? We're a local jurisdiction in the middle of an investigation that is international, and we've got a really dedicated group of interested people in Toronto who are police officers who are working on this stuff, and it's all brand new. It's all brand new. So anybody that's spent more than about 10 minutes on the internet will know what I'm talking about here, but about 4% of the web is indexed. That's where most people spend their time, and 96%-ish. I know some people take issue with whether that's a correct statistic. It might be around 90, but is the deep web. So as police officers, you need to spend time, spending time in these dark places, in these anonymous spaces, even in places where you may not identify who it is that you're speaking to, and you need to do that to understand the tactics being used by people that are there to engage in things like hacking, because there's a wide range of people who engage in this activity for different reasons. So we heard this morning about state entities and why they might be interested in a broader way in terms of breaching our systems. In addition to that, you have people that are interested in just seeing whether there are issues with systems, but not actually engaging in operationalizing that. In other cases, some people may want to operationalize that for nefarious purposes. And so what you'll find when you spend time online in the deep web is a couple things. First of all, you don't have to be very good. We've done debriefs of prisoners after their arrest, and I'll get into that in a little bit in a minute, but when you talk to people in real life, you find out that you don't have to be that amazing to be a good hacker, because when you get online, you can actually find people who will help you. It's a collective. They will give you tactics, they will tell you what to do. So if you're interested and engaged and spend time in these anonymous spaces, you can certainly figure out tactical advantages that you wouldn't have known otherwise. Similarly, you can get code. You can buy code. You can buy code that will hack or can do a DDoS, a malicious attack of any kind that you want. You can buy it online. And if you don't want to buy it online, you can get it for free. So there are people who will release malicious code out, and you can actually just take the code off the dark web. Usually it's posted, and then you can use it for whatever purpose you want to. And some people do that because they're just interested in putting that code out there. They don't necessarily have a nefarious purpose in using it, but they think it's a beautiful thing, and so they release it. And the example I'll give you, for those of you old enough to remember, the Melissa virus of 1999 was the largest virus of its time. Back then, I mean, we're talking 16 years ago, so some people in the crowd are like, yeah. It's when your computer went ee when you got on it. But in that case, the person who created that code put it up on a blog because they were bored, and they created it and thought it would be interesting, and they put it up, and someone else took it and used it and created one of the largest viruses we've seen. So I talk about old school versus new school. So in terms of policing, some people say, oh, cybercrime, that's so interesting. You guys get to spend all this time on computers and do all this cool stuff. And the answer to that is yes. We have a group of people who are really innovative, and they're bringing stuff to court that's never been brought to court before. I have 3 people in the unit who in the last year have become court-appointed experts in areas that have never existed before in court. So, we're going forward, and we're trying to educate people in the justice system and create new spaces for crimes that have not been prosecuted historically and create some awareness. But with that, you can't forget the old school techniques. There's a lot to be said for speaking with people, interviewing people, debriefing people. There's a lot to be said for confidential informants and what they can do for policing. And you can't get away from old school when you jump into new school. So we talk about investigations being in real life and online, and they should kind of run parallel to each other so that you can have a robust investigation to figure out what it is that happened and why. I think the only way to proceed in the future, and one of the things that we're going to have to really do in policing, and it's hard because of the way that we are structured, is we're going to have to look for really interesting collaborations that have never existed before. And those collaborations will be between police agencies, but also outside of policing. So researchers, academics, sometimes even interested coders who are finding vulnerabilities in systems. These are people that we need to engage with. I know in our world, we're in the middle of 2 pretty significant research projects right now, so we want the unit to be engaged in that so we can see what's coming as we try to innovate. But policing, it's challenging. We're highly bureaucratic, and so we really need to kind of break the mold in terms of what we're doing and how we're doing it. And that's difficult. That's difficult not just to do, but to try to convince up our chains of command why it's necessary. I've seen a couple of academics talk about anonymous as they give the analogy of like a swallow of birds, and I actually really like that analogy because this is a swallow of birds for you, those of you who are sort of wondering what this is. So if you look at it, it creates its own shape, right? Its own entity. It is moving fluidly. It's something that can be created rapidly. It'll move in the same direction. You get individual birds. You can see at the bottom, a few of them are like, yeah, we're out of here. They're going in a different direction. But generally speaking, you have something that is much larger than any of the birds individually that are coming together to go in a certain direction. And so I look at this and I see speed and fluidity, and it's quite beautiful and interesting, right? But the world that I live in looks like this. And the reason I like this in comparison is that we also in policing are structured differently. And I look at this and I see strength and I see order. Others might see different things, but I see strength and order, but it's also highly bureaucratic, not quick to change, can often not be fluid, and it's challenging in this environment to be innovative. And so what I want to leave you with today is just the idea of a paradigm shift and how needed that is, and how appreciative I am to be here today, because I think what the Mackenzie Institute is doing is trying to create those spaces where we can talk about what the future may look like. Thank you.